first want to tell you, I learned something new again about what was going on during the Passover festival during Jesus's time, and what the disciples would have known that we don't know today. That has just really struck me and stuck with me. So when we read in the Gospel of Luke that Jesus sent Peter and John to prepare the Passover, what this would have meant was that they would have taken their lamb, and they would have gone to the temple. The temple was still the only place where a sacrifice could be offered, and the Passover lamb had to be sacrificed before roasting and eating it. So they would have gone to the temple, and the city would have been filled. Some accounts say there might have been as many as 2 million people in Jerusalem for the Passover festival. And more than 250,000 lambs would be sacrificed on that day, the day before the Passover, when they would have sacrificed all the lambs. So they would have been there with all this crowd of people with their lamb, and they would have sacrificed their lamb. And then they said that it was set up like an assembly line, this sacrificing the lambs and giving the blood to the high priest, who would dump it on the altar, or to the priest, and who would dump it at the foot of the altar. And then they would take their lambs to another space and they would skin them. And then before they roasted them, what they did was they took 2 metal bars that they hung the lamb on to carry it and then to put it on the spit. And one metal bar would have gone straight from the top to the bottom of the lamb, and another would have gone straight across through the lamb's 2 forefeet, the 2 front limbs, right? So what John and Peter would have seen as they walked through Jerusalem that day would have been hundreds of thousands of lambs crucified on a cross, bleeding, skinned. And that image has just stuck with me, and it helps us to see how I just keep coming back to how God orchestrates everything in the universe in consideration of everything else, right? And this is what they would have seen before coming to eat the Last Supper and hearing Jesus's words about his body and blood, and then seeing him crucified. And going back again to John the Baptist saying, "This is the Lamb of God," right? So I just wanted to give you that image to take to your prayer today too. And then I've also been reading this week a book called A Poet Before the Cross. So this is by the French theologian and philosopher Paul Claudel, who is quoted a lot in the Cantata. I wanted to read you a couple of little paragraphs. This book goes through the 7 last words of Jesus, reflections on those. And so the paragraphs I'm going to read to you are from the 5th word, my God, why have you abandoned me? We raise our eyes toward our divine preceptor and avidly fix our gaze on that heart which we see beating more and more slowly under the ribs the psalmist counts out. He who learned how to be born, who learned from us how to suffer, now we have to learn from him how to die. It is a man God we have been given to look at, a God who is preparing to die before our eyes. What makes the body is the soul. It is God who drew into the womb of the Blessed Virgin Mary the body and the soul, all of man, even the unity of hypostasis. Let us now look at what in front of us quivers, struggles, and dies. Let us leave Magdalene at the foot of the cross, blazing in the realization of the Holocaust. Let us allow that crater of perfume loudly to emit the despair and love under the blood which rains on her, drop by drop. And let us leave to their sorrow today with that humble sinner who sobs deeply, all those who are humiliated and offended, all those defiled and beaten children who see their one friend pierced on the horrible stake. The seer, in order to see, uses his eyes, the blind his hands, and he who has a heart uses his heart. But that is not enough for the contemplative, who within a solemn, deep peace, calling on all he knows, tries to appreciate and understand all the elements of the event developing before his eyes. In truth, we have reached the summit of supreme tension, the tightest tension. The sun is no longer in the sky to distract us. We are fully occupied in being witnesses. Everything is cracking. The veil of the temple is torn. The soul of the centurion is split in two by a flash of lightning. The earth opens, the prison door falls down. Something is collapsing in the caves of the priests. The hard frame of hell itself bursts and lets out a wave of dead and half-rotted corpses. And up there over us, in the heart of Christ, the supreme debate has begun. It is the conflict of the two natures and the two wills united in the closed space of the redemptive vocation. That elusive God you complained of not seeing, of finding nowhere, well, there he is. And he will not budge. He will not escape. He is there, forever attached with 4 nails to the cross. Now and for eternity, you can easily feed on that God who said of himself that he had come not to dissolve, but to fulfill, not to disperse the cross, but to put himself on it. And with Job, we can say, I have heard thy voice now. Nay, more, I have had sight of thee. Something else I learned about what would have been going on at this time, in Jesus's time, the time of the crucifixion, was that at the Passover, they would be reciting the Song of Songs as part of their prayer. So I would like to just conclude our meeting with the bride's praise of the bridegroom, the verses of the song that console his aching heart. The Song of Songs, which is Solomon's. The bride. I sleep, but my heart is awake. I hear my beloved knocking. Open to me, my sister, my love, my dove. my perfect one. For my head is covered with dew, my locks with the drops of night. I have taken off my tunic. Am I to put it on again? I have washed my feet. Am I to dirty them again? My beloved thrust his hand through the hole in the door. I trembled to the core of my being. Then I rose to open to my beloved. Myrrh ran off my hands, pure myrrh off my fingers, on to the handle of the bolt. I opened to my beloved, but he had turned his back and gone. My soul failed at his flight. I sought him, but I did not find him. I called to him, but he did not answer. The watchmen came upon me as they made their rounds in the city. They beat me. They wounded me. They took away my cloak. They who guard the ramparts. As we listen to those verses today, I'm just so strongly seeing how through all the ages, humanity, each one of us, has refused to open the door to the knocking of God on our hearts and our lives. What pathetic excuses those of us who know his love have made to not open to him. Really? To not get up and put my tunic back on? To not dirty my feet for the one who has given me life, every blessing and good gift? He thrust his hand through the hole in the door. He came down from heaven into the open door that our Blessed Mother opened for him into her body. He was already fully in her heart and her soul, and she opened her body and her whole life to him. And he thrust himself willingly, happily through that door to take on our humanity, to live with weakness and poverty. God himself, who is everything, gave up everything to be like us, and now to suffer and to die. And when she was finally ready to find him, he had gone. And where does she find him today? Hanging on the cross, beaten and wounded by the watchmen. The cloak of his humanity stripped, dying for her. As St. John of the Cross says, the lonely shepherd who stretched his arms out upon the tree and gave his everything for his shepherdess. And now she calls out to the daughters of Jerusalem. I charge you, daughters of Jerusalem, if you should find my beloved, what must you tell him? That I am sick with love, that I too have caught his love sickness. Seeing him there on the cross, I realize just how lovesick he is for me. And now I too am lovesick for him. And the chorus replies, what makes your beloved better than other lovers, O loveliest of women? What makes your beloved better than other lovers? To give us a charge like this. Who do you say I am? Who do you see hanging on the cross? A poor carpenter's son wrongly accused? Or do you see the divine bridegroom pouring out his life for his bride? Do you see the lover of all, giving his all for those whom he loves? The bride sees, and she replies, "My beloved is fresh and ruddy, to be known among 10,000. His head is golden, purest gold. His locks are palm fronds and black as the raven. His eyes are doves at a pool of water, bathed in milk, at rest on a pool. His cheeks are beds of spices, banks sweetly scented. His lips are lilies distilling pure myrrh. His hands are golden, rounded, set with jewels of Tarshish. His belly, a block of ivory, covered with sapphires. His legs are alabaster columns set in sockets of pure gold. His appearance is that of Lebanon, unrivaled as the cedars. His conversation is sweetness itself. He is altogether lovable. Such is my beloved, such is my friend, O daughters of Jerusalem." The chorus. Where did your beloved go, O loveliest of women? Which way did your beloved turn, so that we can help you look for him? The bride. My beloved went down to his garden, to the beds of spices, to pasture his flock in the gardens and gather lilies. I am my beloved's, and my beloved is mine. He pastures his flock among the lilies. As I contemplated the agony in the garden last night and the crucifixion and the blood and water that flowed from his side and the sweating of blood in the garden, and the thought that went through my mind was that his blood and living water flowing into the soil of the garden was the healing for the shame and the sin and the iniquities in the Garden of Eden, in the garden of the world. That his blood and living water are the antidote, the remedy to what had been planted in that soil. So may we each stand with Mary today, and Mary Magdalene and the beloved disciple John at the foot of the cross, and lift our hearts as chalices, that we might receive his living water and most precious blood, and drink deeply. Drink deeply, my friends. Drink deeply of love. And that the gift of himself, the gift of our bridegroom, that we might receive it, drink deeply of it, and allow him to redeem and heal the shame, the sin, the wounds, the brokenness in the soil of our hearts, that our hearts might become his place of rest and delight, where he comes to pasture his flock amongst the lilies. That our hearts might be that fertile ground that gives birth anew to Eden in our world. And then on Easter Sunday, we can read these verses of the Song of Songs again from a new perspective. We can run through the streets with Mary Magdalene, looking for our beloved and finding him in the new garden, the garden that has been redeemed, the garden of the resurrection. Let him draw you in his footsteps these next 3 days. The cross and the suffering, pain and the loneliness and abandonment, they're a doorway. They're a doorway to the resurrection. They're the doorway to the eternal wedding feast. It's not the end of the story.